Hey guys, if you really like this episode, please support our podcast by going to talkmurder.com/join and becoming a Talko Supremo. Hey John, can you please cover the story of the Servant Girl Annihilator for me? It's similar to the Axeman of New Orleans case, and I think you'll find it deeply intriguing. Sure thing, Cassie. Here we go. A ghastly murder. A stark discovery in the beating heart of Texas. The blood of these butchered and mangled women cry to the heavens for justice. Survivors lie in wait, begging that their death come quickly, spared the beastly and brutal endeavors of this midnight fiend. This midnight assassin.
Deep in the heart of Texas, the prairie skies are wide and high. Deep in the heart of Texas.
All right, guys, that was the very lovely Jane Powell performing Deep in the Heart of Texas. Now, that's in her 1951 musical Rich, Young, and Pretty. So, yeah, we are going to Texas, so rope them up, cowboy. Let's get this thing going.
So, the hint this evening was servant.
Yes.
We were going to be making cocktails called the...
Oh, it fucking went in my eye. Fuck. Oh,
Okay.
it hit me right in the eyeball.
Oh, no. Yeah, we're going to be drinking Old Maids, but Nicole is feeling under the weather, so in solidarity, we are not really drinking anything of significance.
Well, that's not true. I'm drinking ginger ale, and you guys are drinking some beers, and I didn't obviously make it to the grocery store today to buy the ingredients for said drink, so apologies, but it was going to be either vodka and gin, fresh limes, mint, and cucumber. So it sounded like it was going to be a lovely, refreshing drink. So hopefully we'll have an opportunity to make that another time.
Still have yet to try a mint julep.
I've never tried one either, actually. But I would imagine that what was recommended would taste kind of like a Moscow Mule type thing or a mojito.
I do enjoy mojitos very much.
All right, so Nicole, where are we going?
I think we're going to New York, and we're going to a super wealthy, manor estate where the servant of the house kills a family member.
Ooh. I think we're going to Alabama in the 1960s.
How'd you get that from servant?
Because of the civil rights era.
Like The Help type situation?
Yeah, like the movie The Help.
Okay, I don't know. I've never seen it, but...
Oh, it's a good movie.
All right, Nicole, our third place geography B.
Yes.
Please fill in the blanks of this quote. In blank, we practically come out of the womb in jeans.
What?
He's asking you for a place.
In blank, the state.
Oh.
You didn't get
like,
that? In the blank state,
okay.
we practically come out of the womb in jeans.
Ooh, where's Levi's? Where are they made?
You want me to tell you who said that?
I'm gonna I'll take a fair guess. I'm gonna say Texas.
Okay, that was from Kelly Clarkson. And
she's from Texas.
The quote, well, yeah, of course. In Texas, we practically come out of the womb in jeans.
Sweet.
All right, so tonight we are going to Christmas Eve, 1885.
Ooh,
an oldie.
And this is a request from Cassie, Cassie.
Hey, Cassie.
Hey, Cassie. Oh, also, I forgot to mention last week when we were recording that on the night of our live show was our friend Sarah's birthday, one of our Taco Supremos. So happy birthday, Sarah, belated.
Happy birthday, Sarah.
Alrighty, and as always, we're very excited to welcome our newest Taco Supremos. Welcome to Rhiannon.
Hey.
Laura.
Hey, Laura.
Hey,
From
Laura.
Wales.
Laura from Wales.
Yeah.
Hello, Laura.
You know, there's some Wales that are coming toward the East Coast.
kind
There
of
are.
whales.
There's like big great white whales or whatever. Did you see that on the news clip?
I did not,
Great
but
white
you know,
whales.
whales.
Are you talking about sharks?
No, like whales. They're coming at even
There's-
in Charleston.
There's no such thing as great white whales.
Well, they've been spotted
That's Moby
in
Dick.
Charleston.
That's a
There
fictional
was-
Blue
story.
whales?
I don't know, big whales. There
All
was
right.
there were 2 spotted in
That's-
Charleston.
Well, I like
That's
whales.
cool.
I think that's cool. And also to Sandra, welcome.
Hey, Sandra.
Sandra.
That's
So-
awesome. Thanks, friends.
Yeah, thanks, guys. And Nicole has graciously poured John and I shots, probably to make us feel as unwell as she does.
I wouldn't wish that upon you guys right now.
Well, thank you. Surprise shots, surprise shots. We don't know what they are because they're a surprise.
This is like Midori or something.
No, Midori is green.
Cheers. Cranberry.
It was half blackberry, half raspberry.
Tasted like mustard.
Really?
Yeah.
How? Did
I
you
don't
think
know.
it tasted like mustard?
Now I do. Thanks, Jen. I can taste it now, so thanks a lot for that.
Like the brown deli mustard.
Really?
Yeah.
Weird.
We're going to December 24th, 1885 in the capital, which is what, Nicole? Of
Dallas.
Texas.
No.
Our third place geography bee. Give it one more guess.
Austin.
There you go.
God, really? You would think that Austin's not a very big city in comparison. But that's true.
I'll cut that and make you where it's like you said the first time. All right.
I don't care.
The clock hits midnight, all right? The clock above City Hall hits midnight. I'm going to go into kind of the history of Austin in a little bit.
Keep Austin weird. Did you know Whole Foods started in Austin?
No, I didn't.
Our friend Haley lives in Austin.
Hey, Haley.
Hey, Haley. Hey, Haley. The clock hits midnight above the City Hall in Austin, Texas. It's after midnight, but there's massive parties going on.
Well, it's
Because
Christmas Eve.
yeah, it's
Is it Christmas Eve going into Christmas?
Yeah, exactly. So there's parties everywhere. But back then, there was no entertainment like TV or anything. So you
Yeah,
could
I wonder
hear,
what parties looked like back then.
Well, you could hear things going on outside of your house. It's not like they were inside listening to the podcast or anything. You know what I'm saying? The sound of a horse gallops at full speed down the street. Wait. Yeah, there you go. A night watchman named Alexander Wilkie yells at the top of his lungs as he's going through, literally like Paul Revere. You know how he was like,
The British are coming.
He's yelling at the top of his lungs, quote, "A woman has been chopped to pieces."
Oh, whoa.
Yeah. All right. The victim, Susan Hancock, she's a 43-year-old socialite. Now, she's the wife of a very prominent carpenter in Austin. Now, Austin is in Boomville right now. It's booming, and I'm going to go into that in a
Oil?
little bit. No, not oil. That's a good guess. Cotton. But I'm going to go into that in a little bit. But to be a prominent carpenter means you're very in with society, and you're
That's
wealthy.
interesting.
Yeah, because there's a lot of buildings. It's a boom. In fact, Austin is booming right now, too. A lot of people are moving to Austin.
It is. It is a booming town.
One reporter said, quote, "She was a tender mother and a devoted wife." Alexander Wilkie is riding the horse, yelling this stuff, and he's also saying it's in the home. So she gets murdered inside her own home.
Ooh.
So they go inside the home. Now, her home is situated at the south end of downtown. She is on the floor of her living room and what they called a parlor
Yep.
back then. I don't know if they still call that now, do they?
Yeah.
Some use that term. It's like a sitting room.
Yeah, it depends. I feel like there's a difference between a living room and a parlor.
Yeah.
There's like the fancy of like, there's like the living room, which some people call dens, and then there's like the parlor, which is a sitting room.
It's like when you first walk in the door, it's like an area where there's usually couches and chairs and stuff like that, but it's not.
It seems like a rich person type of thing.
It is.
Yeah.
I was
a
like,
big
damn,
house
there's
type
an
thing.
ice cream parlor in her house? Holy shit.
That is what first comes to mind.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So she's on the floor in her parlor, and she's actually laid out on a quilt. Now, she has 2 deep wounds in her head that the physician and the police and literally all the spectators, the entire town from their parties rushed over. So you've got the entire town in this house. There's a bloody axe laying right beside her. Now, I'm going to go over the autopsy in a second. Now, this is an axe attack.
Well, the guy writing said she was chopped to pieces. Was he exaggerating a little bit?
No, but this is what people first noticed. I'm going to get into the autopsy report in a second. All right. She had one blow so deep that it hit her cheekbone. The second blow was between her left ear and eye. And that blow was actually so powerful from the axe that it fragmented her skull and it shot pieces inside of her brain.
Ew.
She was barely alive, but she was alive.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
well,
she
I
was
wasn't
alive.
expecting that.
Now, she was also oozing blood from her right ear. And
That can't
that's
be
really
good.
important. That's not because of the axe attack. That's something else that I'm going to get to later.
Her brain was rattled so much.
I'm gonna get to that later. The doctor quickly gave her several shots of morphine. Her mouth was barely hanging open, so they took a bottle of brandy and they poured it in her mouth to try to get her to swallow it, and she wouldn't swallow it. I guess that was the medicine back then.
Well,
Pretty much.
something on hand to ease her pain.
Her eyes were nearly closed, but you could see just the white part of her eyes. Her eyes were rolling back into her head. I mean, she's
about to die.
yeah, she is like in the process of dying right now. All right, let's interview the husband.
Who obviously did it.
Is that the truth?
Oh, well, it's usually the husband. I'm just gonna
Is
say
that what
it
you
first.
think, Jen?
I'm refraining from commenting until I have more details.
The wife goes Christmas shopping. This is before the murder.
I need to go Christmas shopping.
The two daughters went to a Christmas party and a neighbor escorted them. They actually returned home at 11 p.m. Okay.
On Christmas Eve?
Yeah, on Christmas Eve.
Oh,
This is
way
a
to
few
leave
hours.
it till the last minute, bro.
Yeah.
This is about an hour before the murder. The husband and wife goes to bed. They actually shared a piece of cake, what he said. All right. Seems kind of sketchy. And they went to bed in adjoining rooms. So they're not actually sleeping in the same room.
Well, they didn't back then, usually.
I know. I'm trying to make you think it's the husband.
Oh.
All right. They go to bed in their adjoining rooms around 10 p.m. Now, around midnight, Mr. Hancock, the husband, says he hears a noise. And he walks into the wife's room, and the trunk is open. You know, the bed trunk with, the trunk you put by your bed?
Yeah, at the foot of your bed, usually?
Yeah. Clothes were scattered everywhere. Blood was on the windowsill of the room. But there
On
was
the
no wife in there.
Interior or exterior? of the window?
Interior. But there was no wife there. So his wife was missing when he first went into the room. He follows the trail going outside. There his wife was laid out in the middle of the yard. He then claims to police that he saw a, quote, shadowy figure jump the fence and run, in which he took a heavy rock, and chunked it at him, but he missed and the guy got away.
Huh. Well, a shadowy figure is awfully convenient.
There you go. Read that, Miss Convenient.
By the death of Mrs. Hancock, I guess she died. By the death of Mrs. Hancock, 8 victims are counted of the heartless fiends who prowl around at night, filled only with thoughts of murder and other crimes. The blood of these butchered and mangled women cries to heaven for vengeance. An outraged community calls for the enforcement of law. Determined officers, backed by good citizens, swear the law shall be enforced.
Ooh, so it's like a gang of angry fiends. Not friends,
Yeah.
fiends.
That was from the Austin American Standard, 30th December, 1885. Let's get to the autopsy report, shall we? She actually had 3 head wounds. Now, this is pulled straight from the autopsy report from 1885. 3 head wounds, one cutting through the upper part of the left ear, through the soft tissues and fracturing the squamous, which I looked that up. It's like a thin...
Squamous, isn't that a type of skin cell?
Yeah, it's a skin cell, yeah, but it's like the thin layer overcoat of your skull.
Ugh.
Portion of the left temporal bone for about 1 inch. 1 inch gash right in her head. One wound was about 1 inch above and to the left of her left eye, like I said earlier, making an external wound about 1 1/2 inches long in a horizontal direction. So that wound I told you that cracked her jawbone, the guy that took the axe actually I don't know if it was the first or second swing, but he like swung it like a damn baseball, and it cut her right between the left eye and just basically just shattered her entire jawbone.
Ooh.
I mean, with a lot of force. The second hit actually fractured the skull and forced a bunch of skull fragments into the quote from the newspaper, the brain substance. So he hit her hard as shit.
Yeah.
All right, so she's dead. Let's go on. Austin, Texas. I'm going to go through the little history right quick. In 1821, Stone Cold Stephen Austin. No
Yeah.
wrestling fans?
No, I got it, but I
Okay.
was confused because you said 1821.
1821, Stephen Austin, Stone Cold Stephen Austin. He founded Austin, Texas. Now, why am I saying this? Because at the time, Austin...
I didn't know that had actual historical significance.
Well, Steve Austin is the name of the wrestler, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
yeah, I know. I didn't realize he got it from that.
The first thing I want to be done is to get that piece of crap out of my ring. You sit there and you thump your Bible and you say your prayers, and it didn't get you anywhere. Talk about your Psalms, talk about John 3:16. Austin 3:16 says I just whipped your ass.
I just thought that was actually his name. I don't
It
know.
is his name.
Is
What
he
do you mean?
related?
No, he's not related, but his dad named him
Is he
that,
from
apparently.
Austin?
I don't damn know. I don't watch
I'm
wrestling.
fascinated.
Holy shit.
We should
All
look
right.
it up.
Stephen Austin, not the wrestler, but the guy that's been dead for 200 years. Stephen Austin was granted an impresario, which was a Mexican term for like a land grant. Now, basically, at the time, Texas was owned by Mexico. A little bit about this. The Mexican government gave him a grant to form Austin, Texas, which it was nothing but nothing at the time. Okay. Tumbleweeds, nothing. It was just open, vast nothingness. Okay, so he goes there and he gets 300 people, 300 families decide to all move there. I'm just going to basically go over this real quick because it's kind of important. The 300 families move there. Now they start their subsistence farming, corn, stuff like that, just to live. Then they start cash cropping, growing corn. Now they're making some money. Okay, this is over. This is not a very long time in between because this murder right here is in 1885. Austin was formed in 1821. That's a very short time frame. Yeah, and this is going to come and play. This is trying to show you how much of a boomtown it was and why it added to the hysteria of the crimes. Next was cotton. Cotton was huge, just like, everywhere in the South. With cotton, you have to have help in picking the cotton, which is why we brought in slavery, right? But slavery was abolished in 1865, so keep that in mind. From that point, 1821, till today, it has been nothing but a boomtown. Austin is still growing at an exponential rate. And back then, it was crazy. 300 families once moved there. And now this murder, you have a whole city was built in under 50 years. It was crazy. All right, anyway. All right, so I said tonight, this story is for our Tacos Primo. Cassie, this is the story of the, quote, Servant Girl Annihilator. That's his moniker.
Annihilator?
Annihilator. And he's also called the Midnight Assassin, which is
Oh.
the book we're reading from, The Midnight Assassin by Skip Hollingsworth. So we're going to be reading a little bit from that tonight. This is a crazy story. Now, from December 1884 in Austin, Texas to New Year's Eve on December 1885, a crazed maniac stalked Austin in moonlit nights and completely
It's only a
butchered
year?
women. For 1 year, he just butchered the shit out of women.
Huh. I wonder what
There
set
was-
this guy off.
There was
It's New Year's resolution.
the murder I started with was the second to last. That day was the last time he would ever kill. And he actually killed another woman right after that. While everyone was at her house, he's killing someone else.
He created a diversion.
He would stalk the streets of Austin with axes, knives, long steel rods, and he would literally rip women apart.
Yeah.
A quote from the New York World said, "A killer who gives to history a new story of crime."
I thought you were going to say a killer who gives 0 Fs because sounds like that.
The moniker Servant Girl. So he's targeting servant girls.
But this one
Not
that you
slaves.
just shared,
The one I just shared was a socialite.
so he's targeting servant girls, not slaves.
Yeah, because
Well, slavery was banned in 1865.
but they still had servant girls. So kind of like here in Charleston, when you got a house, and then at the back of the house you got basically a guest house or a kitchen, what they used to be. So these servant
They're hired
girls,
help. They're like kind of hired help. They
yeah.
have a
So
place to stay and stuff like that.
well, yeah, they get a place to stay. They get to raise their kids there, and they cook, and they're basically paid slaves. That's what they were.
So in this particular case, aside from the socialite who was killed that you went over, were they African American females?
Yeah, most of them. Besides the last one, she was white, and there were attacks on German immigrants too.
Interesting. Okay.
German and from other countries too that are servant girls. He started with servant girls. All right, one citizen suggested that every woman in Austin be given a large guard dog. Another citizen wanted the city lit with arc lamps, which were expensive lights back in the day that completely light up the city and would cost a lot of money. A dozen men throughout this entire time, 12 men were arrested. 3 murder trials, 3 different suspects. No one was convicted ever. No one knows who this guy is. He literally killed for a year. His last day, he killed 2 women, and then he just stopped. Okay.
Really? But they never caught him.
He's never been caught. He's probably still out there today.
Well, I think he's dead by now.
Like the jazz man.
This is from, like the jazz man, but that was 1818, so I doubt that's a connection.
No,
But-
but it's kind of similar how he would kill in the middle of the night.
I was actually thinking, and she's talking about the jazz man in New Orleans, I was actually thinking maybe that was his son.
Ooh.
Oh, that would have been a twist.
So anyway, go ahead and read this. This is from the book The Midnight Assassin by Skip Hollingsworth.
As the journalist once wrote, it is a story worthy of Edgar Allan Poe, a multi-layered Gothic saga of madness and intrigue, panic and paranoia, beautiful women and baying bloodhounds, and flabbergasting plot twists and sensational courtroom drama.
Okay, so this is a newspaper clipping right here that I found from the Austin Standard. The title in huge letters, Bloody Work, A Fearful Midnight Murder on West Pecan, Mystery and Crime, a color woman killed outright and her lover almost done for. December 1884 through April 1885 is where I'm taking us right now.
Okay.
We're going to go over the first murder that he's committed, or she, nobody knows. And this actually happened around December a year prior. So it was a 1 year, as I said. Now, we're at the home of Mr. W.K. Hall. He was an insurance man. He lived at 901 West Pecan. So his cook, his servant girl, she lived out back just like all the other servant girls. And she would cook all day, clean, do laundry. I mean, it was an all-day affair. These servant girls would work Monday through Saturday. Usually they would get Sunday off so they can go to their church. But they would work all day. They'd wake up at 4 a.m. At 8 p.m. they would, after the dinner and then cleaning the dishes, and then they would take the scraps from the dinner from what has not been eaten, and they would eat that themselves, and they would give it to their young children. That's how it worked.
Wow.
Yeah.
Long day.
So it's basically slavery. Now, Molly Smith, she was only there for about a month. She was the family cook. Now, Walter Spencer was her husband. They were living together. After midnight, very late at night, on December 30th, Walter Spencer, the husband, beats on the front door, of the main house. And Mr. Hall comes to the door, and this is what Walter Spencer says, quote, "Mr. Tom, for God's sake, do something to help me. Somebody has nearly killed me." And his entire head was spurting blood everywhere, all down everywhere. He was hit with an axe. Oof. Okay. His wife, Molly, was completely gone. They both go outside and kind of survey the area. Now, they did find a trail of blood. Quote from the Austin Standard, "A distinct trail on the ground leading to her door showed where an inhumane fiend had dragged her."
Oh.
So basically, they saw at night with their gas lamps, they had gas lamps, they saw, and it probably wasn't red because it's at night, but it's like thick, It's like a drag mark of blood
Ooh.
going all the way out to the shed out back, right? She was completely nude. They first saw a nightdress and they knew it was her. And she was completely nude. And then they saw her legs and they were, quote, grotesquely bent.
Ooh. Was she alive when they got to her?
No, she was dead. They walked into her room. The furniture was all knocked over. Blood dripped off one side of the bed, and it was so much blood that it formed a puddle dripping off the bed and forming its own puddle.
Wow.
A blood-stained axe was on the foot of the bed. There was a bloody handprint on the wall of the door leading to the backyard. Now, there was no fingerprint analysis back in the day. Now, I did read in one paper where it was becoming known that the fingerprints were unique, and I saw in one paper where they were basically like, someone should make something of this type of thing. You know what I'm saying? Kind of cool. The trail of blood led 50 feet out to the outhouse. Molly Smith laid on her back.
Stark dead, a ghastly object to behold. A horrible hole in the side of her head told the tale. The reason she had not been discovered earlier was that she lay immediately behind a small outhouse, and no one thought of looking for her there. From the outhouse to the room where she slept was about 50 steps, so the unfortunate victim of the brutal attack had been dragged to the spot where her dead body was found. All the circumstances go to show that the murder was committed in the room where the two were sleeping.
So the husband was actually in there sleeping when this happened, and he got hit.
Molly Smith was on her back. Her head had been nearly split in two, and she had been stabbed repeatedly in the chest and her abdomen. Some of the gashes were deep enough to expose her organs. Her legs and arms were also slashed. Blood was everywhere, bright red lung blood and nearly black gut blood.
Ew.
So much blood was around her, filling up the ruts in the alley, that she seemed to be floating in a pool of it.
Molly Smith had been completely ripped open like a calf at a slaughterhouse.
Oh.
All right, now bloodhounds were used, but they weren't very good bloodhounds, apparently, because all of these murders, they could not pick up any scent whatsoever. Plus, you have all the townfolk trampling over everything, confusing everyone.
Yeah, not much of a contained crime scene.
Now, I do want to take a short little sidetrack here, because I found something very interesting that you guys would like. When the servant girls die, right, and they're African-American, they get a black undertaker to come carry out the body. A black undertaker in that time wasn't allowed to carry out a white person's body. Okay, that was just the time back then. So, and a really interesting note is when the black undertaker would get in and see a body, not just Molly Smith, but anybody, they would always whisper phrases, kind of like inspiring phrases, sort of like, "Here you come, my child. Come meet Jesus, my child."
Aww.
Isn't that kind of crazy?
That's really,
Yeah,
I don't know,
they were known
sweet
to
and
do that,
sad.
yeah. However, Molly Smith, as one newspaper reported, quote, when she was being picked up, quote, "The body did not hold together."
Oh.
So she was literally hacked in pieces.
Oh. Or her body just like kind of fell apart when you tried to pick her up.
The death happened between 10 o'clock and 3 o'clock a.m. on the night of December 30th. And she actually died. Cause of death was a broken skull. That's what the coroner's inquest would say. So this was the first murder. Number one, the husband was there in the room. Okay? It's like he had no plan. He just wanted to get in
kill
there and do
someone.
something. Yeah, exactly. He didn't kill the husband. He just basically hit him over the head and then
And he took
took her. Yeah. So
stripped her naked, but we don't know if he did any sort of thing sexually.
I believe that the motive was sexual because all the women were either nude or exposed and their organ, quote, organ was exposed. But I don't know why they didn't, because they can tell if there's semen there, even though most of the women had husbands that they lived with. I feel like they could have easily saw if she was raped or not. You know what I'm saying? I don't know.
Maybe.
But I saw in no paper where it said for a fact that that these women were sexually assaulted. But it's pretty obvious that they were.
Did the survivors have any?
No, there's a lot of survivors, and no one could tell for sure if it was a black man or a white man.
Huh.
Okay? Because
Fascinating.
he would basically sneak in under the cover of darkness and immediately hit the man, and then immediately start on the woman. So
So in all
And he
of-
would always drag him out to a certain location.
So in all, or the majority of the time, maybe not all the time, there was a sleeping husband sleeping next to the woman?
At first, yeah. And that's why I'm thinking that he didn't know what he was doing. He's just getting into it. So
He didn't study his
Yeah.
people well, maybe.
maybe he didn't realize that there was a husband there, until it was too late.
Yeah. Maybe he would have selected differently, but maybe he's just being reckless.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's his
Picking
first time.
servant houses just
If
to
it
pick
was
'em.
his first time, then it makes sense. Now, just like in the Savannah case that we did, the Gribble House murders, the same thing. The first suspects would be African Americans. The newspaper actually referred to them as, quote, bad blacks. Okay, so within this whole story, as I was researching, everyone that was arrested was African American, even though none of the witnesses could tell if it was a white man or a black man. Okay, and some of the most racist things you've ever heard of.
Oh, I'm
just
sure it
like
was
in the
bad.
Savannah case.
Oh, yeah.
But since this is the first one, they immediately looked to the husband, but then they were like, well, there's no way he could have almost killed himself.
Yeah. I
You
mean,
know.
a great cover up, but no.
Yeah, and then they looked to a romantic rival relationship with a guy named Lem Brooks. Now, he was accused, but he had an alibi. He was actually at a ball dancing. And, quote from a newspaper, if he would have committed this crime since he was there, since he was at that ball until 4 a.m, he would have had to run at, quote, almost lightning speed to kill Molly and severely beat Spencer.
The reader is left to draw his own conclusions, he concluded. Whether slain by her lover or some party from the outside is as yet a mystery that envelops as foul a deed as was ever done in Austin.
Okay, this is from the Daily Statesman, if you want to read that.
The assumption, at least the assumption among Austin's white citizens, was that the servant quarter invasions, as one reporter called them, were being carried out by black men. Bad blacks, the Daily Statesman called them. Quote, it seems from the sameness of the deviltry that its constant repetition that there must be regular gang of these brutes who perambulate the city at the small hours of the night to do their unholy work. End quote.
In 1885, there were 3,500 black citizens, and 20% of them lived in the alley houses, or what's called the servant quarters. Okay, so this whole story, these police officers are dragging multiple African-American men in and putting them through basically torture to get them to confess. No one ever does. One man was actually so angry over the women being assaulted and murdered that he proposed that the Austin police, just like they did in Savannah, round up all of the black men in the city and interrogate them all and beat them and, quote, whip them within an inch of their lives.
Oh, that's good.
Now, let's fast forward to March 2nd. This is the lavish parade celebrating the cornerstone for the new state capitol. Remember, Austin is the capital, and like I said, it was a booming time. Everyone's coming to Austin right now. Everyone wants to come to Austin because everyone's making so much money with this cotton. They had a lavish parade on March 2nd. They were laying 16,000 pounds of granite cornerstone at the new state capitol. And they invited all of Texas. 3,000 invitations were mailed, and they had 10,000 plus visitors show up. The reason I say that is because it seems like anytime there's a really big event or a lot going on, this guy seems to come out and do this stuff, which makes me think he may not even have been a Texan to begin with. 1 week later, a young servant woman woke up to see a man standing over top of her. Now, he stood there and didn't say a word, and then he finally said, "Your money or your life." She was beaten over the head really hard, but the homeowner actually heard screams and the man fled. She lived.
Wow.
4 nights later, multiple servant girls reported the doorknobs of their servant quarters were violently shook as someone was trying to break in. And in multiple cases, the homeowner came out and started yelling and saw the shadowy figure run. Around this time, and after the murder of Molly Smith, the citizens are demanding justice to be done. The police force was very scarce. I think there was only 12 individuals. And from what I read, most of the police weren't even that good. So they actually brought in some vigilantes to kind of night watchman type of people until things settles settled down. And things did settle down. And story's over, right? No. For 2 days after he disbanded that temporary police program on April 27th, so 2 days later, a man entered a small cabin. Now, this is on West Walnut Street. He grabbed a German servant woman in bed, threw her on the floor, beat her a little bit, and then completely disappeared.
And this is after they disbanded, so they think everything is okay.
So it makes me think that he knows what's going on in the town as well.
Because they probably wouldn't make it. I mean, maybe they did because they didn't think about it, but maybe they announced oh, everything's good now.
The temporary police program was actually friends of like the police and the mayor and stuff like that, just people that wanted to earn an extra $2 a night and basically spend the nights away from their wives. And most of them ended up in the bar anyway, drinking.
Wow.
So, yeah.
The case.
The same evening on Mulberry Street, another servant girl, her throat was exposed and a man with a razor was about to slit her throat wide open. But he ran when the homeowner came out because she was screaming. She started screaming. Now, he would come and be like, if you scream, I'll kill you type of thing. Some of the servant women just screamed anyway. And since like I said, the homeowner was so close to the house, 50 feet away, he could hear that. Next night, someone hurled a large stone at a servant window cabin. This is what they began to call, quote, rocked the house, when someone just throws stones at the house. The next night, now I'm not saying this is the same guy or not, but, who knows? So this happens several times. There's several reports where people would get assaulted, but, not murdered.
It's crazy, though, that no one, I get that it's dark out, but it's crazy that no one could even tell what his skin color was.
Yeah, Well, in some cases, he wore a white. One case, he said he wore like a white hood. I was like, oh fuck! But a lot of cases, he wore like something white over his face, like a big bandana or something.
Okay.
And one report actually said it looked like he was a white man, but he had painted his face black, like with charcoal or whatever.
Oh, interesting.
Let's go to May 6th. This is Eliza Shelley, 31-year-old servant girl. She does her chores all day, 4 a.m. to 8 p.m., just like I said. She has 2 boys, which she would feed them scraps around dinner time. Now, she and both of her children climb into the same bed. Let's fast forward to the next morning around 6 a.m. Dr. Johnson, the homeowner, the one who employed her as a cook, wakes up when his wife heard Eliza's small children screaming, quote, crying and hallooing at a fearful rate.
Dr. Johnson returned from the market, spoke to his wife, walked out to the cabin, and he opened the door. In a corner of the room were Eliza's 3 boys huddled together. On the floor next to the bed, wrapped in a quilted bedspread, was Eliza. Parts of her brain was oozing out of a gaping wound in her right temple.
Oh, no.
So let me build up the MO right quick from the first murder that we did. Police noticed the trunk was open.
So they're stealing stuff.
Trunk was open, clothes scattered everywhere across the floor. Axe wound to the skull. Now, remember, we did cases like this before. Axes were actually part of the home. So it's not like he was running around the neighborhood with an axe. He would just get the firewood axe right next to the door.
He never brought a murder weapon with him.
Maybe. Hold on just a second. Because this is the second murder. You can really see him evolving as his killing style. The coroner noticed a very small hole between her eyes that it looked like it was made by like a screwdriver or an iron rod.
Oh, no.
Now, they'll later kind of figure out that it was an iron rod, and I'm going to get to that in a minute.
Oh, no.
There were several deep knife wounds all over her body, so he did bring a knife. Some of the wounds were 4 inches deep, which is
deep.
fucking deep. Yeah.
The blade had been plunged all the way into her body and pulled directly out, severing blood vessels, muscle tissue, and cartilage.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So, as in the newspaper reports, they were saying that it was like a gang, but so far it looks like we might only be talking about one person.
Well,
What do you
they
think?
kind of figured out it was just one person because
Okay.
people would only see one person fleeing. And
So it kind of got into this hysteria of like, oh my God, there's a gang of people doing this.
Yeah.
But it really wasn't.
bloodhounds also saw and sniffed a, quote, large, broad barefoot tracks. Okay, so the killer was barefoot. Now, remember I said that the two sons, actually three sons, were in the bed with her. They all sleep together in the same bed. The oldest was a 7-year-old. Now, this is his testimony. He says he was shaken awake in the middle of the night. A man wearing a white rag over his face, 2 holes cut out for eyes, which kind of made me think of like the Klan, right?
Yeah.
He thought he was white, but he couldn't be sure. He asked the mother where she kept her money, and then he ordered him to put his head under the pillow, which he did, and then he went to sleep. The man actually told him that he was on his way to St. Louis for the next morning to get on the first train, which may have been just something to throw him off. Who knows? So these are 3 headlines that I pulled from various newspapers about this murder, if you want to read them.
Inhabitants of the capital city are again shocked by a blood-curdling murder.
A mother butchered in the presence of her children.
The foul fiends keep up their wicked work. Another woman cruelly murdered at dead of night by some unknown assassin, bent on plunder. Another deed of deviltry in the crimson catalog of crime.
Wow, that's a long
Yeah,
headline.
and that long one I put on my notes must be from the Daily Mail because they always do those long ass headlines. Yeah, it wasn't, but it's funny. Let's talk about how the moniker Servant Girl Annihilator came to be. There was an aspiring writer that actually sent a letter to his friend in Colorado that said, quote, Austin is fearfully dull except for the frequent raids of the Servant Girl Annihilators who make things lively during the dead hours of the night. So that is where the moniker Servant Girl Annihilator came from. He's also got the moniker the Midnight Assassin.
I think the Midnight Assassin sounds cooler, but that's just me.
The servant girls are just losing their minds. They're all scared. A lot of them are just moving out of Austin and out of Texas altogether. A lot of the girls decide to band up and sleep in the same quarters with each other. A lot of the girls would put furniture against the door at night until one elderly black woman did this. She was like 83 or something. Her last name was Tempe. I can't really remember the details, but she had put furniture in front of her door, and she had a gas lantern that was on, and it caught fire, and she actually burned alive.
Oh, God, that's awful.
Yeah, just trying to protect herself from this guy. There was also hoodoo practitioners, kind of like voodoo, but with an H. Now, this is slave-era folk magic we're talking about. They would go and give all these girls this little powder to put right at the threshold of their door to keep the evil spirits out because they believe it wasn't an actual man, it was some kind of evil demon, So they were all religious back then.
Yeah.
Even some of these hoodoo practitioners took black cats and put them in a big pot, a witch's brew, and boiled them alive. They boiled these black cats alive.
Oh, my God.
And took the bones of the cats and made a necklace, and the servant girls would wear the necklaces of the cat bones.
Oh,
for protection.
Well, that's a new one.
Yeah. Let's go to May 22nd. A shoemaker heard a painful moan coming from one of the neighborhood backyards. We're going to talk about Irene Cross right now.
Weyerman and the other family members ran outside and found Irene Cross, their 33-year-old black cook, lying on the ground. Her right arm was nearly severed in 2. A long horizontal gash extended halfway around her head from her right eye past her right ear. It looked as if someone had tried to scalp her.
Oh.
So this is the third murder that we're talking about right now. So let's go quickly through how the MO is evolving. Molly Smith, the first one, right? She was just hacked up with an axe and most likely raped and dragged out. The second one, same thing, but that important point of an iron rod or a screwdriver was basically jabbed between her eyes, her left and right eye, into her skull.
It reminds me of, this is going to sound really bad, cow slaughtering, where they drive the bolt through there.
So the third murder. So do you see he's experimenting here, trying to see what he likes?
That's true.
He did
What's
this.
easiest, maybe?
Yeah, and then this one, this last murder that we just talked about with the Irene Cross, he scalps her. So he's like, I'll try this. I've never tried to scalp someone before. So he's like testing different things. It's kind of crazy. Now, blood was gushing from both her mouth and her severed arm. She actually died on May 25th. She actually lived for 2 days. 12-year-old nephew who lived with her saw a shadowy figure coming through the door, and he ordered him not to scream. He couldn't tell if it was a white or black man.
He's always shadowy, though.
Yeah. Let's talk about some theories from the townsfolk and some of the speculators. What do you guys think a theory is? You think it's just a crazy maniac? Because these guys are very creative.
Well, I think it's a racist. Maybe it's a racist white man.
But what about the last murder I talked about? He killed that prominent white woman.
Maybe the white woman was pro African American or something.
Okay,
treated her servants really well or something. I don't know.
All right. One of the theories out there was there were cavemen, not actual like Geico cavemen, but, quote, a band of outlaws who lived in caves on the Colorado River and would swoop in at night. Because remember I said there were teams of detectives and night watchmen who were undercover scouring the streets, and they could never find this guy. So they thought this guy lived in a cave and would only come out at night.
But what's the point of that then? That's so senseless.
I mean, this is pretty senseless murders.
I know.
Okay, and my favorite theory out there, which is probably correct, was it was a chain gang, escaped convicts, right, that had escaped the penitentiary system, whose leader was, quote, infected with a venereal disease from a servant girl, and now he's seeking his revenge.
I like that theory.
Interesting.
That makes sense. It does make sense.
I find it hard to believe that it's meant multiple people.
But this theory, after this venereal disease theory came out, I mean, because they're rounding up suspects every time this happens. And by suspects, I mean all the black people in the town. They make them pull their pants down and check their genitalia to see if they got some sort of venereal disease, STD or wart or something. Like, this is how they would do it. It's fucking awful.
Which is crazy because that's just like a theory. That's not based on anything. Granted, they're rounding up people also just because of their skin color, so that makes no sense either.
I don't think it is necessarily a gang of people, but I think that could be a motive from whoever is committing these crimes. Someone that, especially if it's a white male, maybe he's from a prominent household and he was having an affair with his servant girl and gave him a venereal disease, and that's why.
Or maybe the venereal thing doesn't have anything to do with it, but it could be still related to that, and he's just angry because maybe she cheated on him or something.
All right, let's kill somebody else. All right, Rebecca Ramey. Now, she lives with her 11-year-old daughter, Mary. Now, they were sleeping in the quarters. In fact, the kitchen is what they called it, like all the other women. Now, she was 200 pounds and about 40 years old, so she was kind of big, husky. A man had snuck in with a club that on the end of the club was filled with sand and bits of lead to make it really heavy.
Oh.
And Rebecca was hit over the head. Her jaw was instantly broken and her forehead completely caved in. But she was alive, and her 11-year-old daughter was the one that was gone. Yeah. So he's changing things up again. They did find her out in the tool shed. If you want to read this, Nicole.
I carried the light, and Mr. Weed pushed the door of the outhouse open with the barrel of his gun. Jacada would later say, "We saw the girl lying on the floor, as I supposed, dead." Mary, however, was not dead. Not yet. Her eyes were partly open, dazed, peering up at the two men with no expression at all. Blood was trickling out of her ears and the blood bubbles coming out of her nose.
All right, so what happened? Someone came in quietly and smashed the mother right over her head, grabbed Mary with one hand over her mouth, what they were thinking, so she wouldn't make a noise, and carried her to the tool shed. Then all right, this is crazy. Remember when I said the first murder, the murderer had used that iron rod to go straight between the eyes and into the brain?
Yep.
Okay. On this particular murder, he took that long iron rod that he carried with him. Like, she's on her back, right? He takes her head and puts her left ear on the floor. Okay, so her right ear is up. Then he takes that iron rod and he jams it as hard as he can into the right ear, and it goes through the brain. Then he turns her head and pulls out the iron rod, turns her head, and does the other side as hard as he can. Basically, what he did was lobotomize her. He basically destroyed her brain with an iron rod, and then, he vanished after whatever he did.
He's getting more cruel What? He is.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
That's awful.
Oh my goodness.
Uh,
That's rough. That's one of the most brutal tactics we've heard of.
The citizens are overcome with terror, not now at the bold, daring desperado in the open street, but at sneaking midnight prowlers seeking opportunity to outrage the unprotected and to shed the blood of the innocent.
Saturday, September 27th, two black servant women who lived on Rio Grande Street saw a man at the door, quote, "I'll kill you if you open your mouth." They scream and the man fled, which is just telling you girls, if you ever get in a situation, you just better open that mouth and start screaming. That's what I would do. Now, later, W.B. Dunham, which was a Texas court reporter, was sleeping when he heard a noise in his quarter house, which housed several servant women. Remember, they're all teaming up and staying together. Gracie Vance, who lived with her boyfriend, Orange Washington was his name, and Patsy Gibson and a Lucinda Bodie were all staying there. The homeowner heard a groan from outside, and Lucinda Bodie staggered out and met the homeowner at the door because they were attacked. And she says, quote, "Mr. Dunham, we are all dead." Now,
Oh, shit.
remember, there are 4 people in that house. Patsy Gibson was barely breathing, blood oozing out of her skull. Orange Washington, the male that was there, he was struck dead with an axe.
Ooh.
Gracie was completely gone. Now, over the backyard fence, which is about a 4 feet high fence, and into the neighbor's yard, there was a small horse stable. That's where they're going to find Gracie's body.
It's interesting. He's not taking his victims when he does take them very far at all.
Yeah, I think
would-
he's just going to...
So it's almost like he's doing this very quickly. So if there is any, because people are hearing the noises or the screams, he manages to take one, possibly assaults them sexually before he vanishes. and
Yeah,
kills
so
them.
all the victims, and I'll get to this in the MO in a second, but all the victims were either half naked or fully naked, and their organs, basically their vaginas, were completely exposed. So go ahead, read that.
She had been beaten viciously in the face that was mostly a mass of bone and skin and blood. Her head was somewhat off-center, as if knocked from its moorings. Her hair and her nightgown were smeared with blood. Beside her was a brick covered with blood and bits of her face.
Ooh.
What I forgot to mention earlier from the last 2 previous victims is they were wrapped up tight like a burrito in a bed sheet. Now that's important because the killer wrapped them up in there. Now this may or may not be true for this case, but the killer actually feels sympathetic and even ashamed, or he wants to give them, show some sort of compassion. So he goes the extra mile and wraps them up or whatever. In this case, there was a silver watch that was wrapped around her wrist. Now remember, she is completely butchered, blood everywhere, but the watch was spotless of blood. So he actually, when he goes into the trunks, he usually grabs that white bed sheet. This time he grabbed a silver watch almost to put on her, like as a memorial type of thing.
Strange.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. That makes you question the motive then, because silver now is worth a lot. I'm sure back then it was worth a lot too. Wouldn't you think that if he had access to that,
He would just
take it
yeah.
and sell it?
Both Lucinda and Patsy were hit in the head with a blunt object. Orange was hit twice in the head. Gracie had been hit at least 12 times in the face with a brick. Not even an axe, with a brick. The bone behind her nose was shattered, and her whole entire face was pushed in like a crash test dummy.
Ugh.
One reporter wrote in the newspaper describing how awful it looked as 2 words, quote, "like jelly."
Wow.
Let me go over the MO right quick. The victims were most likely raped, but no one knows for sure. Very odd and very brutal deaths, okay? The victims were also decorated. That's what I said, with the watch and the bed sheets. They were decorated almost, either the killer felt compassion, and we've seen cases like that before. The Golden State Killer actually did that in a couple cases. Gracie's wristwatch was put on. Victims were also left in full view, kind of like the Black Dahlia, if you think about that. They were full view. I mean, they weren't hid or anything. It was just right out in the open. A lot of them in the yard, the backyard. A witness was left alive at pretty much each murder where there was a witness, right? I mean, he didn't kill everyone. He just basically ran in there and got what he wanted. Okay, read this. This is from the Austin Daily Standard.
The fact that this series of crimes is composed of some of the boldest, most startling flagrations in criminal annals, that they have extended over a period of many months, and that the perpetrator has so far not only accomplished his ends but successfully escaped and blinded the police, would seem to indicate that he is a criminal of no mean ability, but one of the most remarkable ghouls known to the death history of any section of the country.
Now we're back to where we started. Okay, with the socialite death and the one lady after that, basically the same type of murder. Now, there were 2 women killed that night, and between an entire year from basically Christmas to Christmas, he killed 5 women, 1 man, and brutally bashed many other ones in just a crazy maniacal way, okay? And then he literally just stopped off the earth, nothing. No one has heard anything of him ever since, completely stopped.
Do you wonder if he was put in jail for something else?
Well, maybe. But maybe he did kill this one. I don't know. I put this one in here because 2 years later, there was another similar murder. And I don't know if it's attributed to him or a copycat or something else. But I'm just going to go over it real quick. But from what they know, the murders that I've already talked about were attributed to him. I'm not sure if this one is or not, but I thought I'd throw it in here as a bonus. The Weekly Standard, this is from 15th of September, 1888. So about 2 years later and some months, 2 years and some change. This woman, her name was Mary Ann Nichols. Now, quote, her head was almost severed from her body and was completely disemboweled. Okay, one witness said that she was lying close to the wall. Her head was actually touching the wall. Her throat was slit open, and other wounds that he said were too shocking to describe. And one more for you. This is from another paper, The Standard. The inquest as to the death of Mary Ann Nichols, whose shockingly mutilated body was found in a gateway in Whitechapel. Now, that is from The Standard, London. That is Jack the Ripper's first murder, okay? A lot of people think this guy crossed the pond and started as Jack the Ripper.
Interesting.
Mary Ann Nichols was the first victim of Jack the Ripper, and it happened about 2 years later in London. And it started out brutal, which makes me think that he trained over here in Austin, and now when he gets to London, if it's really him, who knows? No one has ever known. But the Jack the Ripper crimes were just horrendous, way worse than these. Servant Girl was because, I'm pretty sure it's the Servant Girl because they're easier to kill and, they're less thought of as prominent society members. So he could literally practice on them.
Right.
Then he gets to London 2 years later, and look what he's doing. He basically mutilates a body. And one of his victims, he displayed all the organs in a store window pane. I don't know if y'all know how much you guys know about the Jack the Ripper cases.
I don't know. I still think it's a bit of a stretch that it could be the same person.
Why?
Because I think
Jack-
it's just as likely that the murder stopped because, one, he killed a white woman and was kind of scared himself silly and was like,
These murderers never stop.
Well, I'm just saying.
I mean, occasionally they do, but if you're a killer, most likely, 90% of the time, you're going to keep killing.
Or he was put in prison for something else. I mean, for someone in Austin to go, there's so many murderers out there. I don't think it's this guy.
Very gruesome.
Sad. Thank you, Cassie, for requesting that one.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that subscribe button on whatever podcasting app you use. If you like this story, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. If you're absolutely obsessed with this podcast and want to become our servant, go to talkmurder.com/join, become a Taco Supremo. Get a badass t-shirt, sticker swag, a lot of love, shout it out all over the place. Tell me what story you want me to do. I'll research it, dedicate it to you. On the Talk Murder to Me podcast, my name is John, here with Jen and Nicole. And until next time,
Take your little silk shirt off. You know Stone Cold can take care of business right here, right now.
What a volatile situation.